This week, the Hogsty continues with its post-draft coverage as we are joined by the Washington Post's Mark Bullock. Plus, we do the very first of our 2017 position group breakdowns and much more next on the Hogsty.
Welcome to the Hogsty with your crew, Adam Tereski, Alex Zeese, Sean Conti, and Steve Thomas. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
And welcome back to the Hogsty. We are here today with longtime friend of the show and guest, Mark Bullock from the Washington Post. Mark is the Washington Post's film expert on all things NFL and particularly the Redskins, and so we'd like to welcome Mark back to the show.
Hey guys.
Hey Mark, good to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having
Sorry,
me.
we had a little snafu there for a minute. Anyway, great to have you back, Mark. Yeah, a little lag, that's all right. We wanted you on because we wanted to go over some draft picks with you because we know you've watched more film than anybody probably on these guys. So let's just start at the top. The Redskins drafted Jonathan Allen from Alabama, which I think universally was recognized by the fans at least as a great pick. He had a bad combine, which made a couple people nervous. So why don't you give us your general thoughts on Jonathan Allen, and then we'll kind of expand from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm kind of with pretty much everyone in that it's kind of a slam dunk pick for the Redskins. Yes, there are some concerns about the shoulder, although the Redskins say that they're kind of happy with that and they have the connection with the Alabama doctor and whatnot. So I'm not too worried about that. He's not the most explosive athletically, in that he doesn't have the sort of quick twitch kind of ability that they look for in you kind of your typical top 5, top 10 defensive tackle.
Right.
He's got just about everything else you could possibly want from a defensive tackle, in that he's got superb technique, fantastic hands, incredible strength. Like that makes up for a lot of the lack of burst. And it's not like he's desperately slow. It's just he doesn't have the quick twitch sort of burst off the line first step that will get him past a guy straight away. He'll have to put his hands on him and then throw him aside, which he's perfectly capable of doing. I'm pretty much.
Let me stop you right there, Mark, for a minute.
Yep.
He only bench pressed 19 at the combine. And yet he's got football strength. Is that the best way to term it? Because from a bench press standpoint, he didn't do well.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about bench press strength. From what you said, football strength is what he's got, and it's not just having strength; it's having functional strength and being able to get your hands on a guy, win with leverage, and use that leverage to maximize your strength, which is what he does superbly well.
Hey Mark, so I was at the presser and I asked Allen about if he prefers to play, inside on like more of a nose position or if he's an end. He doesn't care. But you've watched some film now. What do you think? Where do you think we could best use him? Like, what gaps should we see him lined up against?
So I think in the base 3-4 he'll be an end. So that'll be a 5 technique, either on the tackle or slightly shaded, either inside or outside, depending on the formation and whatnot.
Sure.
Where he will spend most of his time, I'd imagine, is in the B gap as a 3 technique, in nickel and dime sub packages. That's where I would have thought he would spend most of his time. He can go up and down the line. He's played inside as a 1 tech, and you can move him even if you wanted to further outside, play him outside the tackle as a 7 tech or 9 tech if you want to go even wider.
Almost in that outside linebacker spot.
Yeah, if you wanted him to rush off the edge, he's capable of doing that. I mean, he doesn't. It's not something I would have him do regularly, because, as we said, he doesn't have that burst to challenge a tackle for speed off the edge. So he would have to really beat a guy for strength, and he doesn't have desperately long arms compared to most offensive tackles. So it would be maybe somewhat of a struggle for him to win consistently outside, but you could certainly put him there on occasion because he did rush from that spot for Alabama fairly regularly. So,
Sure.
But I think with the Redskins he'll kick inside.
There's some Alabama film of him lining up inside, and you said you could almost see him lining up at the one occasionally. Is that really the best spot for him? I mean, he's not that bulky compared to, say, like a true two-gap nose tackle, for example.
No, it's not something I'd see him do regularly, but it's something if it's 3rd and 10 and you want to rush, and you want to try to get, say, the 3 linebackers, you want Kerrigan, Smith, and Anderson, I guess it would be now, or maybe Murphy. If you wanted to kick one of them inside to the 3 tech, Allen could do the 1 tech in a rush, in a pass rush situation.
So in that pin your ears back, everyone go for the quarterback moment. Get all your best athletes out there kind of situation.
Get your best pass rushers out there. He could kick inside to the 1 tech. It's not something I would have him do in your base scheme.
Oh no.
But
I don't think anyone sees that.
Yeah, no. He's only 290 if that. So he's not,
I think he was officially listed at 286. So right.
It's 286.
So that's not your typical nose tackle, but he's stout against the run. And he's got
having seen him in person, he doesn't have that nose tackles build. He's got the lean, mean, kind of what all defensive ends and outside linebackers look like these days.
Yeah, he's
a big fat guy.
No, not a big fat guy. The big fat guys are all.
I know that's what. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, if you were on the opposing team and you were critiquing Allen and you wanted a game plan against him, what would you do? I mean, what are his weaknesses that you see? He's a great prospect, but nobody's perfect.
No, nobody is perfect. And I mean, his major weaknesses, kind of like we talked about, is he's not the quickest. So he's not going to beat you for speed. So you don't have to worry about him getting to an edge or really bursting off the snap. So you can if you have a technically sound guard, you don't have to worry about him. Say you're playing against Aaron Donald one week, that guard is terrified about Aaron Donald beating them either way for speed, so they're often jumping off the snap too quick and not getting themselves set properly. Whereas Allen doesn't give you that same worry, so you can have your time to get set and really focus on your technique against Allen. But that said, he is technically very, very sound, so he will still be somewhat difficult to block regardless of who the blocker is.
All right.
Okay, so Mark, in terms of the 2nd round pick, Ryan Anderson, well, from what I've seen on Twitter, this is by far the Redskins fans' favorite pick. And I don't really have an issue with that. I like what he's done at Alabama, but as far as the way he's played, and then in terms of I wouldn't necessarily want to pin it all on his combine performance, but he didn't have any elite measurables or anything that was, above average per se. So my question in terms of Ryan Anderson is, do you think, and obviously a lot of people think this, but do you think his impact will be felt immediately in terms of the way he plays, or will it take some time for him necessarily to, mold into the comparison of James Harrison? Is there some things that he has to get down packed first?
Yeah. I don't think he will be a 10-sack a season guy from his rookie year. I think he will have a little bit of a transition, but he seems to have. I think what the fans seem to love is the mentality and the mindset, which is great from all reports, and that's the thing you can't really teach. It's with a guy has it or he doesn't, and so that's the upside of him, is that he's going to be working so hard from day one. He does definitely have some things to work on. Technically, he's pretty sound technically, like all Alabama players are. But because, as you mentioned, he doesn't have the measurables, he's not an explosive speed guy. He doesn't have very long arms. He has to make sure that he wins with hands, and he's consistently winning with hands. If the main problem I saw him having at Alabama when he rushed off the edge is if tackles got their hands on him, he couldn't get himself disengaged and start a secondary rush. So that is the main problem he's going to have, is if his first move doesn't work, can he get disengaged and go on to plan B or plan C or what have you. That being said, I think he's further along than a lot of pass rushers are at this stage, because most of the kind of edge rushers that you take in the first couple rounds are usually guys that are either supremely quick or very long and can challenge a tackle with arm length. And he has neither of those, so he's had to find other ways to win. So he finds he develops a plan, and he sets up tackles, and he makes a guy think he's going one way, goes the other, and then the next rush he'll go back to him thinking he's going inside, and then he'll go outside. So he does have a better plan as a pass rusher than probably most guys do coming out. Okay. But he still needs to develop it a little bit further, I think.
All right, and just one thing that caught my eye when you answered the question initially, you had figured, obviously we wouldn't expect about 10 sacks per year coming out as a rookie, but in your opinion, seeing as how Trent Murphy has suspended the first 4 games, do you feel like a little bit more pressure in terms of, compared to Preston Smith and Trent Murphy when they first came out? Do you think there may be a little bit more pressure on Ryan Anderson to perform quicker than, in terms of, Preston Smith and Trent Murphy as they got off the slow starts to their rookie seasons?
Yeah, I'd say there's probably a little bit more expectation to Anderson in the first few weeks. Whether he'll be the starter or not, I don't know. I would guess they would probably go with Preston Smith, but I guess it's kind of early to say that.
Yeah, we got to remember Gallette's still on the roster too, and who knows?
Oh yeah, of course.
In there.
Yeah, that one I would treat just as completely a bonus.
Hopefully he reminds us when training camp starts and regular season and preseason. So.
Oh yeah, I hope he can get back on Twitter and just let us know he's okay.
It does that every day. Mark, when I first saw Ryan Anderson and and looked at his body type and his numbers, I automatically thought 4-3 inside linebacker. He doesn't really have the speed to be the Mike backer on a 3-4 setup necessarily, but and as a matter of fact, somebody asked him at his press conference if they'd talked to him about moving inside. Is that possible with him? Because he looks more like an inside guy than an edge rusher.
Yeah, when I first watched him as well, I was a little bit underwhelmed, and then I studied him closer, and I noticed his technique was really good. But when you look at the size, you do probably think he could kick inside, and be a bit more of a thumper inside that would sort of complement Zach Brown pretty well. Who's more of a cleanup guy, and Anderson could be the thumper. But I'd be surprised if they went down that route early on in his career. I would think they'll give him a chance to survive on the edge. And if he does, then great. And if he doesn't, then they have a fallback option of, hey, maybe we could try kicking him inside. I think that's kind of the benefit of having a guy like that in the second round, is that he probably does have positional versatility. And if he fails at one, you have a thing to fall back on.
And the other thing I notice about him before we move on is he strikes me as basically a better version of Preston Smith. I mean, is that fair?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I understand that fans aren't too pleased with Preston Smith, and he didn't develop the way that I expect him to this year. But they're very different types of players, because Preston Smith is a big, long, and probably more athletic guy than Anderson. Anderson's a guy that wins with better technique and with more tenacity, whereas Preston Smith can be as good as he wants to be. It's how much he wants to be good. And if he were, by reports, he's come in better shape this offseason, and he's trimmed down and he looks ready to go. And if that's the case, and he can continue to develop his hand usage, because he has such great length, he basically can make sure tackles can't get to him. He can keep himself completely clean, just because of his arm length and tackles not being able to reach him. So if Preston Smith wants to be great, he could be great. It's just a case of how much he's willing to. Whereas Anderson, that's not a question. He's very much a great mentality guy, but he doesn't have the same natural gifts that
athletic ability
Preston Smith has.
Well, fair enough. UCLA cornerback Fabian Monroe, elite athlete, good size. He's injured. Tell us about what you saw in his game.
So the first thing I noticed was how patient he was at the line of scrimmage when he's in press coverage. He has young corners typically in press coverage have a tendency to get choppy feet at the line, anticipating a release, whereas Monroe does a really good job of keeping his feet as still as possible and forcing the receiver to declare their release. Are they going to try to go inside? Are they going to go outside? What are they going to do? And then once they declare the release, then he can get his hands on them. And if they go outside, he can force them to the sideline, which is something he does an excellent job of, forcing them to the sideline on outside releases. He has, as you said, quickness. He's a superb athlete. It's not just a case of long speed, but it's foot quickness and being able to break and keep up with and mirror receivers when in shorter routes and in and out of breaks. So for me, he's very much a man cover corner. He's played a little bit of cover 3. It's not something that's probably very natural to him because he's only been a corner for a couple of years. And he spent most of that as a press corner. So he will probably have some adjustments to do in terms of different coverage schemes. And the Redskins do some different things with not just zone, not just man. They do pattern matching and trap coverages and that kind of thing. So he'll probably have to learn about those. But if you just want a guy that's going to go and press against someone and follow them wherever they go, then I think he can be pretty good.
Now, it sounds like if he's got that kind of skills, could he match up in the slot, do you think? I mean, he struck me as a little bit too big for that, and maybe he's not going to be quite as quick as some of the slot receivers. But if he's good in press man, could he be good in the slot too?
In theory, yes. It's not something I saw him do. I don't think I saw him take a single snap in the slot, or maybe one or two. But most of the snaps that I saw, the vast majority of the snaps that I saw him was with him outside and someone else playing the slot. So in theory, someone that can play press up at the line and someone with patient feet and someone with the type of not just long speed but quickness in short areas that he has, in theory, could play in the slot. It's probably just something that's completely new to him. So he'd probably have to learn that on top of learning all the new NFL coverage schemes and getting up to speed.
We have a lot of, let's say, a pretty deep young roster right now at cornerback. And I know some people say you can never have too many corners, but I think there's 17 defensive backs on the roster right now.
17.
And, how do you see it shaking out with him early on? Do you think, one, I guess the question is, will he be healthy to start the season? But, is he just going to kind of start out as a sub or a dime back kind of thing, and then we'll see where they go from there? Or do you think this is a guy who could instantly be one of the top 3 corners for us?
A large amount will depend on his health and how quickly he's able to get up to speed. If he thinks he can get ready by training camp and be a full participant in training camp, then that would be a huge advantage to him.
Yeah, but every player thinks they're going to be healthy by training camp.
That's very true.
A guy could be missing an arm and say, "I'll be ready."
Exactly. So that's a big if. If he thinks he can, and that turns out to be the case, then I would say there would be a decent chance of him being the third corner. He wouldn't necessarily play nickel, but he'd be the guy that could come in and play on the edge and allow maybe Breeden to kick inside to the slot.
Right.
But I would doubt that he's going to be ready by training camp, considering the post-draft presser that Gruden held,
Sure.
he said that their doctors were going to be there. Well, thought he was going to be ready by September rather than training camp. So that's quite a different story. And if that's the case, I would say he probably doesn't have much of an impact. Certainly the first 4 games, probably the first half of the season, and then works his way up from there. And probably again his first year, I would imagine he would spend time as the third corner. If he can work his way up, he'd be the third corner that would allow Breland to kick inside to the slot.
Sure.
And if you could quickly on Samaj Perrin, because we're kind of running out of time here, but is he our starter next year? I think we know who Samaj Perrin is, right? He's a downhill runner. He's not going to juke you. He's got a lot of power in his lower half. He's going to try to run through you. But all the same, we have Rob Kelly. So tell us quickly about Perrin and whether he's going to be our number 1 back.
Yeah, I think it'll be a pretty good competition. I think it will literally just be whoever does best in training camp wins out. I'd say he has a good chance, but I wouldn't write off Rob Kelly. They are fairly similar in running styles, although Kelly has a little bit more shape to him, and Perrine has a little bit more of a thump to him. So it's just a case of who performs better. I would guess Kelly probably wins the starting job to start with, but Perrine will get his snaps.
Well, I got one question here before we let you go. Who do you think was the big sleeper? Do you think we got any kind of sleeper picks in here? Or I guess the other question is there anyone we drafted and you think we should have avoided altogether now that you've looked at most of these guys?
Yeah, so I have 2 for the sleeper. I really like the tight end Jeremy Sprinkle.
Right.
I don't necessarily think he'll have an impact day one.
No.
I think he needs to get working with Wes Phillips and particularly Bill Callahan to work on his blocking technique so that he has that consistency. But down the line, I think he can be a solid 2-way tight end that they can bring in to block.
And we need one of those. That's the one thing we lack.
Yeah, at tight end you don't have. I mean, Vernon Davis is solid, but not fantastic.
No.
And he's getting on in years. So you have a guy that's ready made to take over that spot. Maybe in a year or 2 down the line, but I think he can be good. The center as well, I've watched a little bit of. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I'll butcher it.
Yeah.
There you go. But he I think has some potential as well. Again, it's a guy that you need to get into the room, let him develop under Callahan,
Sure.
and I think he will be fine. And I don't know if he'll have much of an impact year 1, maybe even year 2. I think they like Spencer Long at center, but I think this guy can be a good backup,
Sure.
swing backup between center and guard. The pick that I don't like is the safety Monte Nicholson. Way too many busted coverages. For my liking. He's basically a height, weight, speed guy that they hope that they can develop. And he's a big hitter, but too many busted coverages, biting on play action and double moves, and
he's another guy who's hurt on
that.
top.
Yeah,
he's another guy who's hurt on top of that. Isn't he hurt?
Yeah, I don't know if that's as serious an injury, but yeah, he is another injured guy.
Final question here for you. My favorite of the day 2 guys was Robert Davis, the wide receiver. And the reason I loved him is he's got a very unique combination of size and speed. What do you think Robert Davis is a guy who can make the roster given the competition at wide receiver?
That's a tough one. I feel like that's kind of another height, weight, speed pick. They think, hey, it's the late rounds. It doesn't really matter. They've got a fair amount of depth at receiver, and you think the first 5 spots are locked. You'd think they go Pryor, Crowder, Doxson, Ryan Grant, who Gruden loves, even though the fans don't, and then Maurice Harris.
The fans don't love him because he doesn't perform and he doesn't produce in actual games. I don't understand. We've said on the show before he must have naked.
Must say you didn't got Steve started, man.
Yeah, don't get me started on Ryan Grant.
Yeah.
So, but you would think, given how highly the coaching staff and particularly Gruden has talked about him, you'd think he's probably relatively close to being a lock, if not for the 5th spot, for the 6th spot. And I think one of you mentioned Brian Quick as well would be up there for that. So that receiving core is pretty packed.
Yeah, we should distinguish. We have 2 guys named Quick now in receiver. So Brian Quick, not the other Quick.
James Quick is the other guy.
Yeah, so maybe if he could be an excellent special teamer, then maybe he can make the roster if they decide, what, we don't like Ryan Grant. But I would see it as unlikely.
Well, you're bursting my bubble, man.
I love that guy. It's not necessarily to say he's a bad player. I just think they're kind of pretty stacked at receiver.
Yeah, they are.
So, I don't see, unless for some reason they were to go 7 receivers, which I would think would be unlikely considering the quality that they do have. I would think they'd tend towards even more 5 than 6.
7 seems like an overload at that position. I mean,
I think Mike Shanahan did that one year, and that ended up not being a good thing, if I recall.
I think that was the year that we couldn't run the ball because we had no running backs.
Exactly. All right, Mark, we got to let you go. We appreciate you coming on the show as always. Check Mark out on the Washington Post in the Redskins section. And Mark, what is your Twitter?
Yeah, at Mark Bullock NFL.
There you go, at Mark Bullock NFL. Thanks very much, Mark, and we will see you next time.
All right,
yeah,
thanks,
cheers,
Mark.
guys. Cheers.
Guys, that was a great interview with Mark Bullock. I want to give props all around, and again, thanks to him. Mark is one of the nicest guys. Anytime we ask him to come on, he comes on. That was just a spur of the moment thing. You decided, Steve, hey, you know what would be great, and it worked.
Yeah, and I'm glad, thankfully, Mark was available. And, of course, that was Alex talking. This is Steve, and we've also got Jamal with us today. How you doing, Jamal?
Well, I'm doing all right, man. I just finished. Well, you guys know about my situation. Steve gave me a shout out on Twitter. I just finished my last class, my last final this morning. So I'm done with.
Did you find out a grade yet?
Oh yeah. I got on the online test. I got a 90. So. Yeah, nice. So I'm officially done with undergrad. Just got to walk the stage now.
Amen. Congratulations, man. That's a big moment. No. And what's amazing is that you did a final today, and yet you're on the air with us today. Most people would want to go to sleep after something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, the thing is with me, like, I've been doing this getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning thing for, obviously because I gotta go to work. I got to get up early. So one more day out the week. I got a 3-day weekend, so I'm off Monday. So I'll endure it one more time today. It's all good.
Remember, when you walk, Jamal, do not do the whole walk with you being naked under your gown. Like that went out of the style in the 80s.
Oh, so somebody lied to me. They said I could do
that. Well, and if you get arrested for doing it, don't call me.
I won't, man. I won't. It's all my own doing. I'll be all right.
My dad's a lawyer in Maryland. I can get
you.
Cool.
Okay. I forgot I work with attorneys too, by the way, so I can get some help if I need it.
Well, I think this week, let's start off with the poll question this week. The genesis of this poll idea was now that everybody's had a week to let the excitement of the draft kind of percolate and
to digest.
Yeah. Now, how do you really feel about it? So that was the thought of it. So the question this week was, now that you've had a week to reflect, how would you rate the Redskins draft? And in lieu of the fact that I couldn't do 5 draft grades, A, B, C, D, E, F, thanks to Twitter, here are the categories. Mm-hmm. Home run, it was 10 great picks. Good, but not great. Meh, it could have been a better draft. Or it was a bad draft all around. So those are the categories.
Sure.
And as always, since Jamal seems to nail this every week, let's start with Alex. I'm
going to say, I think, and I always try and give my opinion and assume that people agree with me because that's the type of person I am, like I've said before. I'm going to say it's good, not great. I think anybody who looks at those top 4 or 5 picks would say it was a home run, and then you kind of look at everything after the fifth round and you can scratch your head a little. So that's good to not great.
Okay. What do you think, Jamal?
It's the same thing as Alex for me. If y'all don't mind, because like I said, I wasn't here last week. I took a bye week because I kept winning the poll thing so much, so I just took a bye week. But nah, do you
You
mind
just
if I
couldn't stand winning too many weeks in a row.
do you mind if I just read a little? Because I wrote an article on this, I think last week, I believe, or maybe earlier this week.
Sure.
Go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. You want to read a little bit
Just
from
a
your article?
little thing from my mind on sports.
Go
So
for it.
I had it as an A minus myself, but I didn't think it was like great. It would put it a little bit over the top, so I just put good, not great. But essentially, I just like the way the Redskins displayed patience throughout the draft. They didn't make any sudden moves. They didn't get impatient. Like when Jonathan Allen seemed like it was falling towards them, they didn't trade up to ensure that they can pick him. They just let the draft play out as it did. Jonathan Allen fell to them. The first 2 rounds, they were able to snag game changers in the front 7. It wasn't speed in terms of Anderson's pick, but it was definitely one of their better prospects in their eyes. And then they were able to snag one of the best, their number 1 prospect on the board in terms of defensively. And then offensively, they tried to find a feature back who could get the tough yards, which we failed to get in the red zone. And in anything short down and distances. They went for size and speed at the receiver position, offensive line, and they tried to find a versatile interior offensive lineman, which worked out well. Because those are reviews for Roulier. I might have said his name wrong. Yeah, okay.
Roulier. I think I'm just pronouncing it
Roulier. All right, so yeah, they went for
it's spelled
definitely because the LL thing threw me off. But anyway,
yeah.
This is a guy who could play center and guard. So this is something that they were looking for. They needed a backup. Drafted a tight end who could be a potential run blocker and pass catcher. And then obviously for defensive in the secondary, they went for size and speed. And this is something that they needed throughout the whole defense. They needed speed. And obviously, as we can see, they got a 4-3 corner, 40 corner. So it was positive. We don't know how it's going to turn out in terms of how they play on the field, but strategically, I love the things that they did. So I had it graded as an A minus.
Well, that's reasonable. For me.
Since I was doing, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say before, because I was doing all that rapping. Before anybody forgot, I said good, not great, in terms of the poll question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not home run.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would have been a good but not great thing, and if I was going to give it a letter grade, it'd probably be B+. The fans felt as we all did and voted 51% good but not great. Okay. A full 41% still had that draft euphoria and voted home run. A small 8% said it could have been better, and a full 0 said it was a bad draft. So that's the first. I think that's the first 0 we've ever had. Not one single person voted that it was a bad draft, which kind of surprised me.
Because if somebody put 0, they would have been trolling.
We had some
if they
people
said it wasn't good, they would have been trolling.
Probably.
I mean, we had people who were unhappy with the Allen pick, so that's just amazing.
Yeah, it was.
What? I guess they sobered up.
Yeah, real quick, 1 or 2 comments. This is from Joe, who is Joey S4481. He says, "I will say the farther we get from the draft, the less I like it, and I still really like it. Just think we could have improved our weaknesses some more." So that was Joe. Yeah, I thought that was pretty fair too. This is Thom, who is Skins fan at _76. Somewhere in between first and second option. Some great picks in there, but not 10 great picks, which is also fair. It's kind of a common theme here.
Yeah.
Look.
I don't think there's ever going to be a draft where you're going to see them pick 7 people you agree with.
Yeah.
So, the fact is, those first 5 picks or so are all picks anybody could say, okay, this makes perfect sense. So, in terms of finding players at a position you need.
And the last comment...
And you think...
Yeah, the last comment I'll read is Sporty Politico, at Sporty_Politico. He says, it's worse over time. Meaning over the past week, he's thought, it's gotten kind of worse in his mind. He says he thinks Anderson won't be dynamic. Moreau needs a lot of coaching. Perrin is solid. Number 3 tight end, and the others are lottery tickets. So it's kind of a common theme there, I think. That was the poll question. Yeah. And, of course, the draft in what happens with the draft leads us into our next topic here, because the news broke this week and it was written up in the Washington Post, and I think CBS Sports had it at one point in time. The news came that the Fritz Pollard Alliance, which is the overseer of the Rooney Rule for the NFL, announced or stated that they had seen a plan, or at least were aware of a plan for the Redskins to reorganize their front office and not hire a new GM. So, number one, the reason why the Fritz Pollard Alliance cares is that the GMs are covered by the Rooney Rule, and so if the Redskins hire a new GM, they need to hire an African-American candidate or a minority candidate. That's why they need to interview one. Sorry. Yeah. So that's why Fritz Pollard cares. But that's kind of big news in Redskins land, because it's sort of what we all feared. Bruce Allen is in charge, so what do y'all think?
Well, I mean, let's go into this a little more detail, what the plan probably is then. It sounds like everyone's really happy with what Scott with 2 T's is doing in terms of the draft.
Scott Campbell.
Yeah, I'm calling him Scott.
I know, but in case anybody out there doesn't know, he's talking about Scott Campbell, who's the director of player development.
Find people who don't pay obsessive compulsive attention to the Redskins front office. It's Scott with 2 T's. But I think, and I agree with this, he's done a good job the last few drafts. He's been supposedly talking with a lot more players. The fact that they took free agency off his to-do list, I guess, has really helped him. It sounds like Doug Williams, no one knows what Doug Williams does except for the front office, but they're very happy with him, and it sounds like he might get a little bit more of a promotion-defined role as well. And then I guess Alex Santos, the same thing as a free agent scout, but
that's scout.
I don't know about you guys. I'm not as thrilled with his work, but you just look at the results.
The big question obviously is how much did Scott McLuhan's influence mean on the draft?
Sure.
Because everybody out there, hates Bruce Allen and blah blah blah. But the bottom line is, can the Redskins draft well without him? Right? They seem to at first glance this year. Last year's draft hasn't made that much of an impact, frankly.
Right.
So one could make an argument that we're actually better off without Scott McLuhan. I don't know.
Well,
Jamal, what's your opinion on all this?
We should never judge a draft in the first year.
Typically, I just see that. It's just the way that they went. Like I mentioned earlier, just the strategy behind their picks is what you can really grade a draft. But obviously, in terms of production, you definitely can't grade it like that. So, but in terms of how I felt about the article, I just agree with what Alex said. In terms of I'm on the same boat. Like they're just basically probably going to give some people some pay raises and maybe give them more influence on. A little bit more influence. Obviously, nothing higher than Bruce Allen, but a little bit more influence on decision making and things like that. But I don't really. We was prepared for this like a long time ago. After Scott was fired, because they may not have they may have stayed in house with the decision making, and then obviously from what we're hearing, this is the first step to do so. So. They're not necessarily going outside for a general manager. They may stay inside and make this officially a collaborative effort, announce it publicly that it may be just a collaborative effort within everybody that's in there, or they may just give one person the general manager job. As who it should be, I'm not sure. I don't know. Or who it can be, I don't know. But I just feel like if they're going to keep doing this group collaborative thing, I don't really have an issue with it. There's a lot of people in there whose resumes from over the past few weeks that we've known, they're pretty solid. They've been making proper decisions, and they've done a lot of thorough work. And I can't really knock it out. So in terms of Bruce Allen, I don't really at this point. I don't hate the man. I can't hate him. I don't dislike him. I don't like him, but it's just I'm just neutral when it comes to Bruce Allen. But that's just how I feel about the situation. It's something that we've been prepared for, or been warned against for a while. So,
yeah.
Well, I'm not there with you on Bruce Allen. I still look at how this whole situation was handled.
I mean, I
and put
agree
a
with
lot of
that.
it on
That
him,
hasn't changed.
and a lot of negative on him. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, what you're going to see, I think you're right. Scott Campbell, his title right now is Director of College Scouting. Now it's going to be like Vice President or Managing Director of College Scouting. Same with Santos. I don't know what they'll do to Doug Williams. I mean, he's kind of got like the amorphous title and position.
Probably not going to change.
I mean, but we've heard that they love him in the front office for whatever he does.
Yeah.
It's just not clear what he does to fans.
My opinion on all this, you know, I think what has been proven is that Bruce Allen just can't have someone working with him who he doesn't have control over. I think
that's true.
Seems to me, you know, because I mean, listen, people. I mean, I think we as a show can attest to the fact that the Redskins, somebody in the Redskins front office leaked information about Scott McGloon's drinking. You know, because we got leaks. We got those leaks on this show
and we're
from
nobodies,
somebody.
and we started getting those leaks.
Right. And so, and as you know, and if it proved to be untrue in the end, or even if it wasn't, you know, the reason why it got him fired, that did come out, and so that did happen. And I do blame whether or not Bruce Allen did it. I blame him because he's in charge and he should stop that stuff. But I just think at this point, it just shows that he can't have somebody on this team that he can't control, and so it's just we're just not going to have a GM, and that's it. And so you just have to hope that the guys you mentioned, you know, Santos and Scott Campbell and whatever role Doug Williams plays, you just have to hope and pray that they can do a good job, and that's really all you can say about it. You know.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I would wonder. Sorry, Jamal, but I mean, I would wonder if, for Rooney Rule reasons, if nothing else, which is not a good reason to do things, but I wonder if Doug Williams' title changes to something a little bit higher, just for that reason. You know, and I mean that's not a good reason to hire somebody.
By the way, is Senior Personnel Executive, which I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows what that means.
I mean, Steve, you're in the corporate world way more than any of us.
Yes.
What the hell does that mean?
Could mean anything. Listen, you know, if you go to listen, if you go to any major bank, like a national bank, they've got thousands of senior executives, and they've got thousands of people who are vice president and are corporate officers, so they can sign stuff. You know, it could literally mean absolutely anything. You know, so it just makes me wonder.
To me, it almost sounds like you're the senior.
It's a title, period. It doesn't mean anything.
Almost, in a way.
I promise you, it doesn't mean anything necessarily. Right. I just wonder, you know, because of the Rooney Rule, if they're going to be forced to make some changes, you know, not just sort of continue status quo. So,
well, I mean, Williams, African American, Santos is Hispanic. I don't know more, you know, any more than like that, but
I don't think
you have two guys
who
So, you know, that's two guys who hopefully can be promoted, and the Rooney Rule would be satisfied at some level.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that was the article. You know, interesting. We'll see what comes out. But the big exciting news from the Hogsty is we get to start position group breakdowns again. Yay, everybody cheer for this.
Yes.
Because we like this.
Whoop-de-whoop.
Hey, no. We like talking about Redskins personnel.
24 more weeks of position group breakdowns, folks. Because remember, we do a separate one for punter and kicker.
Yeah. No, I think we timed it out this year, so it'll be slightly better than it was.
Right.
We actually see, you know, a peek behind the curtain is we were winging this before. We've actually planned it out this year. So
yeah.
We're going to do tight ends this week, and we're going to start off with tight ends. And you know, obviously the number one tight end is Jordan Reed. You know, I think everybody knows how good Jordan Reed is, but I was curious about where he really falls. Well, first of all, let's real quick his stats. Career stats: 248 receptions, 2,602 yards, 10.5 yards per reception, 20 TDs, which is a lot. My thought was, where does he really fall in the pantheon of tight ends?
You know, in the NFL,
in
or
the NFL,
you mean in Redskins history?
No, in the NFL. And so I looked up, and he's played 46 games over 4 years. He's missed a lot of games. Everybody knows that. And so I took Tony Gonzalez and Jason Witten, and looked at their first 47 games of their career, which was 3 years, not 4 years for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony Gonzalez at the 47 game mark had 168 receptions, which is about 80 less than Jordan Reed, 1,838 yards, and 15
significantly
TDs.
less there.
Yeah, now that's one less game, so add a few to that. Jason Witten, 188 receptions, 2,084 yards, 13 TDs. So they were both behind his production. And the other thing I did, and I'll hand the stage over to you guys here in a minute, looked at catch percentage. Jordan Reed's got great hands. And so, I looked at the catch percentage for all tight ends from 2013 to 2016, meaning what tight end caught the most balls thrown at them. And, I want to ask you guys, to guess. It's Jordan Reed, number one in the NFL. 78,
really?
70,
even past Gronk?
Past everybody. 75.8%, number one in the NFL from 2013 to 2016. Heath Miller was second. Travis Kelce was third. Jason Witten was fourth. And so then I did one more query in here, and I threw wide receivers into that over the same time period. Take a guess. Want to guess?
At least top 5.
He's number one. Wow. Number one in the NFL with tight ends and receivers in catch percentage over the past 4 years. So, listen, Reed has better numbers than Gonzalez and Witten over the first 4 years of his career, and he's number one in the NFL in catch percentage. Mm-hmm. Is it possible he's underrated?
I would say it is, except for the big factor, and that is the injuries. And if you're gonna have these discussions, the fact that this guy has had so many concussions, and the fact that he's never played a full season in 4 years, I think you have to factor that into the whole equation. And does that count against guys like Gronk?
That would have been my
probably
counter
should as well. Yeah, because Gronk's been knocked out for a while too.
Yeah.
In terms of active tight ends, it's hard to say anybody when they're on the field is better than Jordan Reed or Rob Gronkowski, and they're different kinds of players. So you have to factor that in as well. There's so many variables to the tight end game now. So many different types of tight ends. It's not like receiver where there's basically 2 types of receiver. There's so many little things that different tight ends do well now.
I would like to add, I wouldn't necessarily say he's underrated at this point. Because if you think about it, he's always in everybody's top 5, or in the majority's top 5, and that's where he belongs. In terms of top 3, top 2, you got to remember who's out there. The things that he does is, as a receiver, is great, but the people that's in front of him does more than just contribute on the receiving end in the passing game. And Gronk has been effective in both the running and pass. A lot of people have a lot of respect for Greg Olsen. Delaney Walker's out there. I wouldn't have Travis Kelce or Tyler Eifert in front of Jordan Reed. I would probably put him at 3. I'm talking about Jordan Reed. I'll probably put him at like 3 or 4 if you can make an argument for somebody else. But there's definitely arguments out there to say that there's other people that's better than him because they contribute more in both the passing and running game. We all know how annoying it is to see Jordan Reed in the run game and see him blow assignments and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say he's underrated. Just has some work to do in terms of being a complete tight end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I will say this, though. Jay Gruden this offseason said that the offense runs through Jordan Reed.
And that's true.
And that is true.
100%
It's 100% true. And I think that of any player on the field, including Kirk Cousins on offense, that he's the biggest difference maker. And that's, again, in my opinion, more so than Kirk Cousins, for those out there on Team Kirk. The team just looks completely different, and he's such a huge mismatch in terms of his speed and his route running. He's the most critical part of the team on offense.
He takes over the middle of the field.
Yeah, he really does.
What he does.
Now, our number 2 tight end is Vernon Davis, 6'3", 250. He was first round pick by San Francisco in 2006. He was known for his elite speed. He was running a sub 4.40 as a tight end, which is just ridiculous. On a career, 505 receptions, 157 TDs, 12.7 yards per reception. He's got a real good catch percentage too, although it's not quite as high as Jordan Reed.
No, but he was Jordan Reed before Jordan Reed, so
he's a little bit bigger, a little faster.
Yeah, but he was that mold of hybrid wide receiver tight end. Right. Early on in his career.
I mean, he's obviously reaching the end now. Does he still have it, though? That's the question. I think he does.
I mean, as a number 2, I think we could keep him for another couple years and he'll contribute.
Yeah.
And I don't think he will go anywhere else after the Redskins. I think this is his last stop. He knows it. He wants it to be here since he's from around here. I mean, what can you say? He's a great number 2. He'll probably end up being a number 3 at some point before he retires.
I don't think he's running a 4.35 still, but he's still a fast tight end.
Nothing higher than a 4.5.
But he's probably still running a 4.6.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's running a 4.5, which is still blazing for a tight end.
Yeah. And good leadership. I think that's the other key factor he provides.
Yeah. I mean, now we've got 2 kids, in Sprinkle, and Jordan Reed's still a young player, and it's probably good to have an old hat like Vernon Davis around. He's about as good a number 2 tight. Now, he's a joker tight end. We talked about this with Bullock. Reed and Davis are in the joker role, not in the inline role, and neither one of them are great blockers, particularly Reed.
Right. And that's why, if you remember when I was doing my draft stuff, I said the one thing we actually do need is a blocking first tight end, and that's what we got with Sprinkle.
Yeah.
I didn't think of him, but
I'm glad to see the team was at least on the same radar. In terms of blocking, and we'll get to Sprinkle. He has some work to do. All right, we'll talk about Sprinkle in a bit.
What do you think about what's your Vernon Davis take, Jamal?
You said it for me. I didn't have anything to say. Honestly, he's a good number 2. I do feel like if we're gonna have, well, we'll see. Like I said, we're gonna talk about Sprinkle soon, but we do have to improve the fact that we do struggle to block at the tight end position in terms of in the run game. But they're very versatile in the passing game. They can do a lot of things. Vernon Davis can still stretch the field, and Jordan Reed can work the intermediate to short game. And obviously we know that if it runs through Jordan Reed, we work inside out. So Vernon Davis will get just as much work as Jordan Reed, but Jordan Reed is obviously the dynamic player on the field. So I'm definitely.
Yeah, it must be said. It must be said also that Jake Gruden likes 2 tight end sets. Having Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis on the field at the same time is something that's going to happen and has happened. I would put Niles Paul as our number 3 guy right now. He was hurt obviously last year. He's had some injury concerns. He's 6'1", 242. If everybody recalls, he was a converted tight end. Mike Shanahan drafted him as a wide receiver. Yeah,
another joker, really.
I mean, he's too small to be an inline blocking tight end. He's a special teams, warrior, and it was a real shame he got hurt, the first time, because that was supposed to be his year as the starter, really. On a career, 55 receptions, 762 yards, 2 touchdowns, a pretty darn good 13.9 yards per reception. I think Niles has got some proving to do this year to stay on the roster. I like Niles. He's worked hard. He deserves what he has. Yeah. But we have a lot of tight ends, now. So he's got to keep up his special teams role and prove that he can be that backup to the 2 guys at the top.
I agree. Honestly, and this time I agree with Steve. I think he has a lot of work to do this. He has a lot of work to. This training camp this off season. Honestly, because I told somebody on Twitter, because somebody had asked me if I felt that Jeremy Sprinkle can actually make the final 53, and I thought that Niles Paul will get the nod over him. But if there was anybody that would get cut or that would get we'll move on from, would be Niles Paul because of the injury history. I think he's one significant injury away from not being on this roster, and that hinders his opportunity. And it's unfortunate because as soon as he got the 3-year contract extension, it's just been downhill in terms of injury. Yeah. So it's just something that's been unfortunate for him. Yeah. But in terms of if he's healthy, he can contribute. Obviously, we know that he can contribute, but it's all about if he can stay healthy, and that's just something you don't want on your name, unless you're Jordan Reed, who produces.
Well, in terms of guys,
yeah.
In terms of guys that you're thinking will get cut before Niles, I mean, they're not going to keep 6 tight ends. In case everybody thinks that just isn't going to happen ever. You know, if they
we have technically 6 right now.
If they keep more than 3, I'd be stunned. And you know, Derek Carrier is a guy who was brought here by Scott McLuhan, who worked with Scott McLuhan in San Francisco, and Scott McLuhan's not here anymore. You know, and Derek Carrier's been hurt as well. You know, he's 6'4".
Yeah, he hasn't really contributed much of note.
Yeah. I mean, he's 6'4", 248, so he's a little bit bigger than Niles and Jordan Reed both. You know, but one could argue he's from the previous regime. You know, and his talents. Well, he does have talent. I think if other people do what Derek Carrier does better. You know, and so I think Carrier's another guy that needs to watch out. You know, his on a career only has 28 receptions, 256 yards. You know, and he's been hurt, so he's another guy that I think needs to do a lot of work to make the roster.
Yeah, I mean, I got to kind of disagree with you guys on Paul, by the way. I think he might be good as gone at this point. I think the fact that we drafted a blocking tight end signals a shift in some of their philosophies when it comes to what they want to do on offense, situationally at least. And I just don't see how this team's going to keep... If we keep 3 tight ends, there's no way we're keeping 3 receiving threat first-type tight ends.
And I think they will keep 3 tight ends.
In there.
I think they will keep 3 tight ends this year.
To me, I think Carrier and Sprinkle are probably battling it out for that number 3
we also have
spot.
Wes Saxton, too.
Well, that's true. We have... I forgot about Wes Saxton.
He was a practice squad guy last year. He played. He was active for 1 game with the Jets in 2015. But other than that, he's been a practice squad guy. He's 6'4", 235. So he's tall and by football standards a little thin. From South Alabama.
Yeah.
In college, only had 96 receptions in 32 games in college. He may be somebody they're trying to develop as a blocker, but. I think, he may be headed for another year at the practice squad also, frankly.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the one thing we have to keep in mind. Davis, older, he signed a 2-year deal. That might be the end of the road for him. And Jordan Reed does have an injury history, so you do need to keep those factors in mind when it comes to who might be on the practice squad that can step in.
Well, the only other thing I'd say about all this is that Niles Paul is critical to special teams when he's healthy.
Oh, yeah.
And
I agree
he was
with
a team
that.
captain.
How much I value special teams.
Yeah, so I think he's got a shot there. Jeremy Sprinkle is the 6th guy on the roster. He's our inline blocking tight end. We've already discussed him. 6'6", 256. Jay Gruden seems to like him. From his comments. They could put him on the practice squad, I suppose, although a 5th-round pick on the practice squad. I mean, they did it with Matt Ioannidis last year, so they could do it with Sprinkle.
Yeah.
So, we'll see.
You can do it with anybody. Yeah. I mean, you could put a 1st-round pick on the practice squad. He just won't stay there.
You'd lose him. So, did you give your opinion on Sprinkle, Jamal? I forgot.
I don't think I had either, honestly. But in terms of Sprinkle, I think that he's definitely he's a solid. In terms of in the passing game, he's a solid pass catcher. That's one thing that's always been a positive in terms of our tight ends per se. But we definitely are counting on him to be the guy that we hope can be the inline blocker that you mentioned that we need. And when it comes to Sprinkle, I do think that he can be that guy. He has some work to do molding. He's not necessarily from. And I saw his highlights, but I had to read the scouting reports in terms of his ability to affect the run game because all they show is receiving skills on highlight tapes.
Yeah, that's the one problem with watching highlights on tight ends, man.
Excuse me one sec. But in terms of highlight tapes, like it was pretty much defeating the purpose trying to figure out if he can run block. But he has some work to do in the run game.
Yeah.
And we'll see if he's able to, be the guy that they want him to be. But the positive thing is, and actually Alex spoke on it, he's Niles Paul is a good special teamer, but I mean Jeremy Sprinkle, he did well in special teams as well at Arkansas.
Oh, really? I didn't. I
Yeah.
haven't watched any
So
of
he
that.
was.
So
He had some praises in terms of his special team abilities at Arkansas. So we'll see. We'll see what he's able to do come preseason. So if he's able to contribute in multiple ways, then yeah, Derek Carrier, Niles Paul, one of them can definitely be out of a job in Washington come regular season. Yeah, one
or
or both.
both. I mean,
Yeah. All right. So that's our tight end position group breakdown. Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis are locked in, and the other four guys are fighting for roster spots. And Niles Paul may have a leg up in special teams. And we have run out of time for the show here, but I wanted to give everybody a quick salary cap update, mainly because I finally got around to it, and because we made a bunch of moves. So now this is without accounting for the draft picks,
which is a big,
because they're not signed. The Reds. Yeah, it does account for Moses' new contract, and it accounts for all the unsigned free agents. We're at about $8.5 million in free cap space. Now, under the rule of 51, the draft picks are going to account for something like another $2.5 million.
Right, because only odds are only Allen.
Well, it's under the rule of 51
over the 51. Right?
Well, no, it would be Allen and Ryan too, and maybe Samaj Perrin, or maybe Moreau too. It's going to be about between $2 and $2.5 million. But for the regular season, they're going to count about $7.5 million. Now, and so that's where we are salary cap now. Real quick, Morgan Moses. I got the details on Moses, and we're kind of locked into Moses for a while. So hopefully he'll be what we all think he is. $38.25 million contract, $14 million in guarantees at signing. Looks like signing bonus is about $9 million, $20 million total guarantees. His cap hit this year isn't too bad. He's at $3.6 million for a cap hit in 2017. His dead money is huge, $43 million. And he's got $40 million in dead money in 18. And on top of that, if he's on the roster at the start of the 2019 league year, his salary, a good chunk of his salary comes guaranteed. So basically, we're locked into Moses for 3 years. So let's hope he pans out. So that's salary cap. It's up on the website now. So if you want all the details, go to hogseye.com. And that's it, unless anybody else has anything else. We are going to wrap it up here. It's been a great show, and we will see you all next time. Check us out on Twitter at The Hogsty. We're on Facebook at Hail to the Hogs, right?
I don't honestly remember what. I think it is Hail to the Hogs. You're right.
And we're on Instagram as well, although I think that's really not gotten off the ground yet, but I know we are on Instagram.
No, I'm trying to work out some kinks.
Okay,
right.
Yeah. Well, we either are or will be on Instagram. So that's it for the show this week. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you all next week.